In the heart of Nigeria, where the red earth holds centuries of memory, a storm brews. It is not just a story of one village, it is the story of survival, betrayal, greed, and the struggle for the soul of the land itself. Oil flows like blood, children whisper lessons under broken roofs, and brothers turn into enemies. Tonight, I bring you a tale where traditions collide with power, where ancient gods still whisper through the wind, and where every choice carries the weight of generations. This is not a story of heroes and villains, it is a story of people, torn between hunger and hope, faith and fear, life and death. Listen carefully, because what happens here could happen anywhere. And once you step into this world, there is no turning back. Chapter 1, Roots in the Red Earth. The red earth of Anambra clung to bare feet like a stubborn memory. Morning light filtered through the palm fronds, painting the mud walls of the houses in shades of bronze. Smoke curled lazily from cooking fires, women's voices rose in song as they pounded yam, their rhythms blending with the distant crow of roosters. Adana stood at the threshold of her small schoolhouse, chalk dust already marking her fingers. She was young, barely 24, but carried herself with the poise of someone who had inherited not just her father's face but his sense of burden. The classroom was little more than a concrete shell with cracked windows, yet to her it was sacred ground. "Children," she called, her Igbo lilt carrying across the dusty yard. "Come, we must begin before the sun grows hot." A chorus of small feet pattered across the compound. Boys with patched shorts, girls in faded uniforms that had passed through cousins and sisters. They carried slates, battered notebooks, and in their eyes a hunger that Adana understood too well, the hunger for a future that was more than survival. But as the children settled, her eyes wandered to the distant road. There, she saw Chinedu, her older brother, standing with men in pressed shirts, laughing too loudly. He was already dressed in the sharp suit of an ambitious trader, his shoes polished enough to blind the sun. Adana sighed. She loved her brother, but Chinedu's ambitions were fire that could consume them all. By midday, the sun pressed down with merciless weight. The air shimmered above the fields of cassava, and the distant buzz of motorbikes grew louder as traders from Onitsha passed through the village. Adana dismissed her students early, the heat was too much, and the children were already squinting with exhaustion. On her way home, she crossed paths with Mama Ifeoma, the old priestess. The woman's frame was bent like an ancient tree, her wrapper faded but her eyes sharp as a hawk's. She carried a calabash covered with palm leaves, murmuring words that seemed older than the road itself. "Adana," the old woman croaked, "your father's blood walks with you." Adana froze. The words were both a blessing and a warning. "Mama, I am only teaching children," she replied carefully. Mama Ifeoma sniffed. "You think chalk and slates will protect them from men with greed in their bellies? From spirits that have been restless since the white man's oil cut the belly of our earth?" The old woman walked on, leaving the scent of herbs in the hot air. That evening, the compound gathered as drums echoed from the square. It was the season of Irig, the New Yam festival, a time when the people offered thanks to the earth before eating the first harvest. Women wore coral beads, men dressed in starched white, and masquerades danced under the lantern glow, their raffia costumes swaying like spirits set free. Adana clapped her hands with the rhythm, though her mind was heavy. Chinedu stood near the elders, speaking with El Hoji Musa's men, who had arrived from the city in shiny SUVs. Their presence was like oil on clear water, thick, out of place, leaving a sheen that would not wash away. "Chinedu," she whispered when she pulled him aside, "why are you with them? Musa is not our people." Her brother smiled, the way a man smiles when he believes he is already a king. "Adana, Musa has power. He can bring roads, contracts, money. Do you want your students to forever write on broken slates? We need someone like him." "And at what cost?" she shot back. He didn't answer. The masquerade passed between them, its wooden mask grinning, as though the spirits themselves laughed at their quarrel. That night, when the village grew quiet, Adana sat under the udala tree, her notebook on her lap. She wrote by lantern light, words of hope and lesson plans mingling with private doubts. Far down the road, the rumble of a truck drifted through the night. The driver was Bola, a Hausa man hauling goods from Kaduna to Onitsha. His headlights cut across the dark, and for a fleeting moment, they illuminated a group of boys at the roadside, armed with cutlasses and crude rifles. They waved him down. Bola slowed, heart pounding. He knew what this meant. The land was not safe anymore. Chapter 2: The Road and the Blood. The truck's engine growled as Bola pressed harder on the brake. Dust rose around him, blurring the figures that blocked the road. The men were young, barely older than boys, but their eyes were already hardened by hunger and violence. One of them banged his cutlass against the side of the truck, sparks flying in the night. "Driver, park there," the leader barked in Hausa-accented English. His voice was sharp, brittle with false courage. Bola's palms were slick on the wheel. He had driven this road for years, long enough to know that Nigeria's veins were lined with thieves as much as with tar. The goods he carried, sacks of rice, cooking oil, fuel drums, were worth more than their lives. He killed the engine. The night grew heavy. "Bring money first," the boy demanded. "Fuel too." "Musa's tax." Bola's jaw tightened. Everyone knew Musa's name. It floated through the villages like smoke, carried in whispers: politician, thief, kingmaker. His men collected taxes on every road. But tonight these were not Musa's uniformed thugs. These were desperate boys with no future, only cutlasses. "I have little to give," Bola said carefully. He reached for his wallet, pulling out crumpled Naira notes. "Take it and let me pass." The leader snatched the money, counted too quickly, then spat into the dirt. "Not enough." His gun clicked. Bola's heart raced. He thought of his wife in Zaria, of his 2 sons, of the prayer mat folded in the cab. He thought of the countless men who had died nameless on these roads, buried by silence. And then, a shout. From the bush, another group emerged, this time in proper boots and uniforms too clean for this dusty highway. They carried rifles, their faces half lit by the truck's headlights. "Clear the road," one of them roared. The boys scattered, vanishing like ghosts into the night. Relief rushed through Bola, until he saw the insignia on the newcomers' uniforms. Not police. Not army. Private militia. Musa's men after all. The leader, tall with a scar across his cheek, leaned into Bola's window. His smile showed teeth stained with kola nut. "You are lucky tonight, driver," he said. "Bandits wanted your blood. But El Haji Musa protects this road." He tapped the side of the truck, then extended his hand. "Now pay his tax properly." Bola swallowed hard, reaching again for his wallet. He knew he would go home with less than half his earnings. But what choice did he have? As the men vanished into the night, the silence returned, broken only by the faint whisper of the wind through the bush. Bola restarted the truck, his chest heavy. He drove on, headlights cutting a lonely path. But he knew one truth: the blood of this road would not dry. In the village, the next morning, rumors swirled of another hijacking further east. This time the driver did not survive. Mothers shook their heads, fathers muttered curses at a government that never came. Adana heard it all as she gathered her students, her chalk scratching against the blackboard. She looked at their small faces, their eyes too young to carry such fear. "Knowledge is power," she told them, even though her voice trembled. "No one can steal it from you." But when she dismissed the class, she saw Chinedu again, climbing into one of Musa's SUVs, its black glass reflecting the sky. He did not meet her eyes. And from the veranda of her hut, Mama Ifeoma watched silently, a cowrie in her palm, lips moving in a language only the old gods still understood. Chapter 3, The Voice of Ra with Grave. Night returned with a weight that pressed against the roofs of mud and corrugated tin. The drums from the Yam festival had faded, leaving the air raw and uneasy. Children had fallen asleep under raffia mats, their bellies full, but the elders stayed awake, whispering about strangers in black SUVs and young men with rifles who now prowled the highways like hungry dogs. In her hut at the edge of the village, Mama Ifeoma prepared her shrine. The walls were lined with clay figures painted in white chalk, their hollow eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. Calabashes filled with herbs and palm oil lay before them, each covered with feathers, beads, or bones. The old woman's hands shook slightly as she poured libation onto the red earth. Palm wine hissed as it sank into the soil. Ra with grave, she whispered, her voice creaking like an old drum skin. Children wander into the mouths of lions. Men with black hearts drink the blood of the land. Tell me what must be done. The flames flickered. The shadows of the figures stretched across the wall like restless spirits. For a moment, the hut grew unbearably hot, though the night outside was cool. Mama Ifeoma closed her eyes. The voice came, not in words but in the pounding of her chest, in the hiss of the fire. The land is wounded. The children will pay. She opened her eyes, sweat running down her wrinkled face. Her hand reached for the cowries. She cast them onto the mat, their ivory shells clicking against one another. The pattern that formed made her throat tighten. Blood. Betrayal. Fire. The signs were clear. Across the village, Adana woke suddenly, heart racing. She had dreamed of her father, dead 5 years now, standing in the schoolyard, pointing to the cracked blackboard. Behind him, the walls were aflame, children screaming as shadows danced across their faces. She sat up, breathing hard. The lantern flickered, casting long shapes against the walls. She tried to steady herself, but the unease clung to her like sweat. A knock came at her door. It was Ndozi, the journalist. She had arrived from Enugu earlier that day, her recorder and notebook never far from reach. She carried the city's urgency in her step, her eyes sharp, searching. Adana, she whispered, I need to ask you something. The teacher blinked, still shaken from her dream. At this hour? Ndozi slipped inside, shutting the door behind her. Her voice was low, urgent. You've seen Musa's men, yes? In the SUVs? Adana nodded slowly. They are not only here to smile at the elders. They want the land near the river. There are oil traces there, government reports suppressed for years. Musa is moving fast, bribing chiefs, silencing anyone who speaks. Adana felt the weight of the words. Oil. The same oil that had cursed the delta, that had poisoned rivers and made ghosts of fishermen. She thought of her students, of their laughter under the Udala tree. What would oil bring them but ruin? And my brother, she asked softly. Ndozi's gaze dropped. She didn't answer. In Lagos, miles away, Emeka sat in a smoky room with his gang. Music boomed from a cracked speaker, the air thick with weed and sweat. Guns lay casually on the table beside bottles of cheap gin. Tomorrow, one of the boys grinned, we moved to Anambra. Easy job, Musa's men already waiting. Emeka leaned back, eyes half closed, the city's neon buzzing faintly outside the window. He thought of his village once, before he left, before hunger taught him that survival required teeth sharper than a cutlass. Anambra, he muttered. That is Igbo land. My land. The others laughed. And what has your land given you? Mud huts. Empty stomachs. Musa pays. That is what matters. Emeka said nothing. But in his chest, something twisted. Back in the village, Mama Ifeoma finished her ritual. The fire died to embers. She laid the cowries back into their pouch, her lips trembling. The ancestors had spoken. The children were in danger. Chapter 4: The City That Devours. Lagos never slept. It growled. The city's heartbeat was the blare of Danfo horns, the endless rumble of traffic, and the cries of hawkers who wove between cars with baskets of plantain chips and sachets of pure water. The bridges sagged under the weight of buses, the gutters stank of refuse and stagnant rainwater, and neon lights glowed above streets where deals were struck in whispers and in gunfire. In the heart of Ejiganal, Emeka walked through the alleys with his shoulders squared, a cigarette glowing between his lips. He had grown up in these streets, fighting for scraps of bread, for respect, for survival. The city had taken his childhood and given him a pistol instead. Tonight, the gang house pulsed with music so loud the walls shook. Inside, men shouted over each other, their words slurred with gin. Girls with heavy eyeliner and tired eyes leaned against walls, watching, waiting for whatever scraps might fall their way. Emeka sat apart, his face carved in stone. His reputation had made him leader of his crew, swift, ruthless, impossible to corner. But inside him, something still stirred when he thought of the village he had left behind, the red earth, his grandmother's stories by the fire, the sound of masquerade drums. "Boss," a boy shouted over the music. The call came. "Musa's people are ready. We move tomorrow." Emeka exhaled smoke, watching it curl toward the ceiling. He had heard the offer, easy money, plenty of it, for one job. They would escort Musa's SUVs to villages in Anambra, make sure no one resisted the land deals. Land deals. He almost laughed. City boys had no use for farmland, but men like Musa saw the ground not as soil but as oil, black gold buried deep. "Tomorrow," Emeka repeated. His tone was flat, but his crew cheered as though it were victory. Later that night, when the gang was asleep, Emeka wandered into the streets. The city air was damp, heavy with exhaust fumes. He found himself staring at the lagoon, the water dark and restless. Across its surface, skyscrapers gleamed like cold giants. He remembered his mother, her face thin, her hands cracked from years of farm work. She had begged him not to go to Lagos. "The city devours boys like you," she had said. She had been right. But Emeka had learned one truth: the city did not devour those who became predators themselves. He flicked the cigarette into the water and turned away. Tomorrow, the red earth would feel his boots again. Far away, in Adana's schoolhouse, the teacher stayed late, stacking books, scribbling lesson plans. She lit her lantern low, the only glow in the silent compound. Outside, the bush rustled with insects, but beneath their hum, she swore she could hear drums, faint, distant, not of festival but of warning. In her mind, her father's voice echoed, "Never let strangers take our land, Adana. The earth is our blood." She clenched her chalk-stained hands. She did not know yet that her brother, her village, and her childhood were about to collide with the city she feared most. And somewhere on the highway, Bola's truck rolled south again, his eyes weary, his wallet thinner, the shadows of Musa's men still haunting his rearview mirror. In the dead of night, Mama Ifeoma woke suddenly, her cowries rattling in their pouch as if moved by an unseen hand. She whispered a name she had not spoken aloud in years. "Ogun," she breathed, trembling. "God of iron, war, and the road, something is coming." The embers in her heart flared once, then died. Chapter 5: The Lies of Faith. Sunday heat clung to the church like a second skin. The corrugated roof groaned under the sun, and sweat dripped down the foreheads of men in starched shirts and women wrapped in their finest lace. Fans spun lazily overhead, moving more dust than air. At the pulpit, Pastor Ideal stood tall, his white suit gleaming, his Bible clutched like a sword. His voice rolled through the building, heavy, rhythmic, hypnotic. "Children of God," he thundered. "The devil walks in this land. He comes in black cars with tinted glass, in promises of money, in the shine of oil that poisons the soil. But who will stand firm? Who will say no?" The crowd roared, "Amen." Hands shot up, eyes wide with tears or fever. Ideal's gaze swept over them, farmers, market women, youths restless for something greater than their small village lives. He knew what they wanted, not only salvation, but a leader to tell them who to blame for their suffering. "Listen," he cried. "When the serpent tempted Eve, he offered fruit. Today, the serpent offers contracts and bribes. But I, your shepherd, I say no. We must resist with prayer, with fasting, with faith stronger than bullets." The congregation clapped, shouted, fell to their knees. Some wept openly. From the back, Chinedu watched with narrowed eyes. He admired the man's charisma, but he also saw an opportunity. If Musa wanted influence here, the pastor would be either an ally or an obstacle. Later, outside in the scorching yard, Chinedu approached. "Pastor, your words move mountains," he said with a smile. Ideal wiped his brow, eyeing him carefully. "And you, young man? I see you near Musa's people. You must choose your road. A man cannot serve God and mammon both." Chinedu laughed lightly. "Pastor, every road needs both prayer and money to be built." The older man said nothing, but his eyes glinted. That evening, in the market square, the pastor led a night vigil. Drums pounded, voices rose, candles flickered. The air crackled with a feverish energy as people sang against poverty, against corruption, against unseen demons. Some fell to the ground, convulsing, crying out in tongues. Mama Ifeoma stood at the edge, leaning on her staff. She watched with a grim expression. To her, these displays were noise, drowning out the true voices of the ancestors. When Ideal's eyes met hers across the crowd, it was like two storms colliding. One wielded faith draped in scripture, the other carried secrets older than any church. He shouted louder, as if to silence her without speaking her name. Meanwhile, in a dim room miles away, Dozie replayed a recording on her small tape deck. Musa's aide, drunk, his voice slurred. "We pay the pastors too, they stir the people, make them believe we are chosen men of God." Ndozie's hand trembled slightly. If she could expose this, she thought, perhaps the country might wake up. Yet she also knew, those who shouted too loudly against Musa often disappeared. She looked at her notes, the names, the dates. Her heart pounded with both fear and hunger for truth. By midnight, when the vigil finally ended, villagers walked home with tired bodies but fiery spirits. Ideal returned to his chambers, closing the heavy door behind him. There, waiting in the shadows, was one of Musa's men. "Pastor," the man said softly, handing him an envelope thick with naira. Ideal hesitated only for a breath, then took it. "Preach fire," the man murmured. "But never against Musa." The pastor's hand tightened around the money. His lips moved in silent prayer, or perhaps in quiet bargaining with his own conscience. Outside, lightning split the sky though no rain came. The air smelled of iron, sharp and unsettling. Mama Ifeoma, awake by her dying fire, whispered to the night. "Even the preachers have been bought. The gods will not forgive." Chapter 6, Sand and Oil. Ndozie sat in a dim guest house room in Oka, the fan overhead rattling with every spin. The bulb flickered, casting shadows across the maps and papers scattered on her bed. She had spent weeks following whispers, tracing contracts hidden in government offices, bribes disguised as development funds. Her tape recorder clicked as she spoke into it. Evidence indicates that El Haji Musa has secured rights to lands along the Idemalai River. Locals have not been informed. Survey teams were escorted by armed men. The oil is real, satellite imagery confirms seepage. If drilling begins, farms will die, water will darken, fish will vanish. Another Niger Delta, birthed in Anambra. She stopped, exhaling sharply. Her pen tapped against her notebook, a staccato rhythm of nerves. Every new piece of truth felt like both victory and a death sentence. The next morning, she walked through the village fields. Children ran barefoot through cassava rows, women balanced water pots on their heads, men bent over hoes. Life here was fragile, stitched together by soil and sweat. Ngozi felt the weight of it, how easily Musa's machines could crush it all. She stopped at the riverbank, watching the water slide by in slow ripples. The surface shimmered strangely, rainbow slicks swirling where no oil should be. She crouched, touched it with her finger. The sheen clung to her skin, refusing to wash away. Behind her, a voice spoke. "You see it too." She turned. Bola stood there, his clothes dusty from the road, his eyes weary. "You're the journalist," he said. "I heard you asking questions." Ngozi straightened, cautious. "And you are?" "Just a driver. But I know this river. I know what it looked like 10 years ago. I drive the roads, I see the soldiers, the boys with guns, the trucks that pass at night with no license plates. Musa's name is always there, like a curse." Ngozi studied him. His voice carried no flourish, only fatigue, the kind that came from witnessing too much. "Will you speak on record?" she asked. Bola shook his head quickly. "I have children. If Musa's men hear my voice on your tape, I am finished." He started to walk away, then paused. "But I will show you something." That evening, Bola led her along a dirt road deep into the bush. They moved quietly, the cicadas shrilling in the thick night air. Eventually, the trees parted to reveal a clearing. Ngozi's breath caught. Metal tanks squatted like beasts in the darkness. Pipes ran into the earth, hissing faintly. A small flare burned at the end of a pipe, its orange tongue licking the night sky. The smell of crude was unmistakable, thick, metallic, suffocating. Men moved around with rifles slung over their shoulders, guarding the site. "This is not supposed to exist," Bola whispered. "No license. No records. But Musa takes what he wants. And the chiefs take his money." Ngozi's hand trembled as she raised her camera, snapping pictures in quick bursts, the shutter muffled by her scarf. She knew this was it, the proof that could bring Musa down. But she also knew, once she carried these images out of this place, she would be marked. Back in the village, Adana lit her lantern and read through her lesson notes, but her mind drifted. She thought of Chinedu, of the black SUVs that rolled in and out of the square. She thought of the strange rainbow slick she too had noticed on the river when fetching water with her students. Her chest tightened. Something was being taken, quietly, in the dark. And she feared they would all wake too late to stop it. In his mansion in Abuja, Musa leaned back in a leather chair, sipping whiskey. The reports had reached him already, journalists sniffing, villagers uneasy, pastors stirring crowds. He smiled faintly. "Let them talk," he told his aide. "The land is already mine. Words will not stop oil." That night, Ngozi locked her notes, tapes, and photographs into her bag. She could barely sleep, the weight of her discoveries pressing against her chest. She had the truth. But truth in Nigeria was a dangerous thing. Chapter 7, Brothers in War. The sun was cruel that afternoon, hammering down on the corrugated roofs until the whole village shimmered in waves of heat. Adana waited under the Udola tree, arms folded tight against her chest. She had sent word for Chinedu to meet her there, away from the elders, away from Musa's men. When he finally arrived, his shoes gleamed, his shirt freshly pressed, the faint scent of imported cologne trailing him like arrogance. He smiled, but it was the smile of a man convinced of his own destiny. "You look troubled, sister," he said. Adana's voice shook, but not from fear. "Why are you selling our land to Musa?" Chinedu's smile faltered. He adjusted his cuff, buying a moment. "I am securing our future. Do you not see? With Musa's investment, we will have roads, jobs, schools." "Schools," she cut in sharply. "And yet his men already bleed the roads. Children cannot fetch water without seeing rainbow poison on the river. What kind of future is that?" Her brother's jaw tightened. "You have lived too long in chalk and chalkboards, Adana. The world is not built with lessons, it is built with money. With power. And what good is money when the earth beneath us dies? When the children cough from oil smoke instead of learning under the tree?" Their voices rose, echoing through the square. Passers-by slowed, curious, uneasy. A few of Musa's men lingered near the SUVs, watching, their rifles slung casually across their shoulders. Adana lowered her voice, stepping closer. "Brother, do you not remember father's words? The land is our blood. You betray him." For the first time, Chinedu's composure cracked. His eyes flashed with something between anger and shame. "Do not speak of father," he hissed. "He died with empty pockets, teaching children who still walk barefoot today. I will not die poor. I will not die forgotten." Adana's throat tightened. She wanted to strike him, to drag him back from the abyss he was walking into. But all she could do was whisper, "You are not only betraying father. You are betraying us all." He turned sharply, climbing into the SUV. The door slammed, the engine roared, and dust rose in his wake. That night, Adana sat in the schoolhouse alone. She pressed her forehead against the blackboard, chalk dust smearing her skin. Her chest ached, not only from betrayal, but from the helplessness that gnawed at her. Ndozi entered quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I heard," she said simply. Adana looked up, eyes glistening. "He was my brother. Now he is their man." Ndozi hesitated, then pulled out the photographs from her bag, the oil tanks, the flare, the armed guards. She laid them on the desk. "This is bigger than your brother," she said. "This is Musa's war. And if we do not stop it, there will be nothing left for your students to inherit." Adana stared at the images, her stomach churning. She thought of her children's faces, of Mama Ifeoma's warnings, of the rainbow sheen on the river. Her hands curled into fists. In Lagos, Emeka prepared his men. They loaded rifles into duffel bags, their laughter sharp and reckless. Tomorrow, they would head east, back to the red earth of his childhood. But Emeka sat apart, silent, the cigarette trembling slightly in his fingers. He thought of his mother again, of the words she had spoken before he left, "If you forget the land will forget you." And he wondered if, after tomorrow, there would be anything left to remember at all. At her shrine, Mama Ifeoma cast the cowries again. They fell with a clatter that made her breath catch. The shells formed a line. A road. And across it, blood. She whispered, her voice hoarse, "It begins." Chapter 8, The Cry of the Night. The village lay under a heavy moon, the air thick with the scent of dust and sweat. Lanterns flickered in the square where elders had gathered, voices low, unease clinging like mist. Everyone felt it, the way silence can sharpen into a blade before the strike. From the bush came the growl of engines. Black SUVs, their glass tinted, their tires crunching the red earth. Behind them, a battered bus rolled in, carrying men with rifles. Laughter spilled out of the windows, loud and jagged. Adana froze at the sound. She had been preparing lessons by lantern light, but the noise dragged her outside. Her students, startled from sleep, huddled behind their mothers. The first SUV stopped in front of the square. Chinedu stepped out, suit pressed, smile stretched thin. He raised his hands. "My people," he announced, "Musa has sent his blessing. With his investment, our children will have new schools, new clinics, new futures." His voice cracked as a second vehicle door opened. From it spilled Emeka and his gang, rifles slung, eyes hard. Their boots struck the earth like war drums. Gas rippled through the crowd. Some recognized him, the boy who had left years ago, swallowed by Lagos. But this was not the boy they remembered. This was a wolf returned to the fold. "Stay calm," Chinedu shouted, forcing a smile. "They are here to protect us, to ensure progress." But the villagers saw the guns, the sneers, the bottles of gin swinging from hands too eager. Progress did not arrive with bullets. At the edge of the square, Mama Ifeoma appeared, staff in hand, her wrapper dragging through the dust. She raised her voice, cracked but fierce. "Children of the Red Earth, do you not see? The gods warned us. This road is paved with blood." Some murmured agreement, others shrank back. Pastor Ayadil, standing among the crowd, seized the moment. "Brothers and sisters," he cried, raising his Bible. "We must resist the devil with prayer. Let no spirit of violence enter this house of God's people." But even as he spoke, one of Musa's men pressed an envelope into his palm. His words faltered, his conviction wilted. The villagers saw it, and their faith cracked. Ndozi, crouched behind a hut, raised her camera, snapping pictures in rapid bursts, the rifles, the SUVs, Chinedu's smug face, Emeka's restless eyes. Evidence. Proof. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared it would give her away. Suddenly, a gunshot split the night. A young man, drunk and reckless, had fired into the air. The sound echoed off the trees, sending children screaming, mothers pulling them close. In the chaos, someone shouted, "They will take the land." Another cried, "No more oil." The crowd surged, anger boiling. Adana stepped forward, her voice breaking through the panic. "Stop this madness," she shouted. "Chinedu, Emeka, listen to me. This land is not for sale, not for plunder. It belongs to our children." For a heartbeat, silence fell. Chinedu's face hardened. "Sister," he said, voice low, "step aside. You do not understand the world we live in." Emeka's eyes flicked to her. For a brief moment, something human stirred, memory of the boy who once played under the udala tree. But his men were watching. Their fingers tapped impatiently on triggers. And then chaos exploded. Gunfire tore the night. People screamed, scattering into the bush. Dust rose, lanterns toppled, shadows collided. Adana dropped to the ground as bullets ripped through walls. Mothers clutched children, men hurled stones in desperation. Mama Ifeoma raised her staff, chanting, her voice carrying over the violence. She called on Ogun, on Ae with grave, her words fierce and trembling. Sparks erupted from her fire, leaping into the air like defiance itself. For a moment, the gang faltered, unnerved by her voice. But then one of Musa's men shoved her roughly to the ground, her staff snapping in two. Adana screamed, rushing to her side, but the smoke stung her eyes. Through it all, Ngozi kept filming, heart hammering. Every frame was truth, every image a weapon. But she knew, if caught, she would not survive the night. At the edge of the square, Bola arrived, his truck grinding to a halt. He leapt out, swinging a crowbar, striking one of the gang aside. He shouted at the villagers. "Run! To the bush! Save the children!" His voice cut through the madness. Mothers grabbed their little ones, fleeing into the darkness. Still, the square burned. A hut caught fire, the flames licking higher, the crackle mixing with gunshots. The sky itself seemed to weep smoke. In the chaos, Adana locked eyes with Chinedu. "Is this the future you wanted?" she cried. His face twisted, part fury, part shame, but he said nothing. He climbed back into the SUV as gunfire rattled around him, slamming the door shut. The vehicles roared, reversing, engines screaming. Emeka jumped into the bus last, his eyes lingering on the burning square. For a breath, he looked as though he might stay, might fight for the land he had abandoned. But then the bus lurched forward, carrying him into the night. When the echoes finally died, the village lay broken. Smoke curled from blackened huts, the air thick with gunpowder and grief. Blood stained the red earth. The cries of widows pierced the silence. Mama Ifeoma, bruised but alive, whispered hoarsely, "The gods were right. This is only the beginning." Ngozi clutched her bag to her chest, her camera still warm. She had captured everything. But she trembled, knowing Musa's men would come hunting. Adana sat amid the ruins of the schoolhouse, chalk scattered across the dirt like bones. Her students' voices echoed in her memory, laughter now drowned by screams. And far away, in Abuja, Musa raised his glass of whiskey once more, smiling as the news reached him. The land was bleeding, and he was already counting the profit. Chapter 9, Ashes of Tomorrow. Dawn broke slowly, bleeding pale light across the ruined village. Smoke still curled from charred huts, the smell of ash and oil clinging to everything. The once busy square was silent, save for the low sobs of women searching for their sons, and the crackle of timbers collapsing into dust. Adana sat on the schoolhouse steps, her dress torn, her hands stained with chalk and blood. The blackboard behind her was scorched, but faint words still lingered, half a lesson on numbers, unfinished. She stared at it as though the answer to their suffering might be hidden in the equations. Children huddled near her, eyes wide, clinging to her arms. She whispered promises she did not believe herself. "You are safe. I will protect you. We will rebuild." But inside, her heart was breaking. Mama Ifeoma moved through the wreckage like a shadow, muttering prayers under her breath, scattering kola nuts in the dirt. Her staff was broken, yet she clutched it like a wounded limb. "The spirits are restless," she whispered to Adana. "The blood spilled here is not the last. This land will not sleep. It will call for justice." Adana met her gaze, her own voice hoarse. "Then who will answer that call?" Ngozi slipped from the bush at sunrise, exhausted, her bag clutched tight. Inside were the photographs, the recordings, the truth, captured in trembling hands. She crouched beside Adana. "I have what I need," she said softly. "Enough to expose Musa, enough to make the world see." Adana's eyes flickered with something like hope, but also fear. "And if you fail?" Ngozi hesitated, then admitted, "If I fail, they will silence me. And they will silence all of you." She looked around at the ruined square, at the women crying over covered bodies, at the children staring blankly into the smoke. Her throat tightened. "But I cannot walk away." On the highway far to the west, Emeka sat in the back of the bus, his rifle across his knees. His men slept, snoring loudly, but he stared out the window at the passing trees. The image of the burning schoolhouse haunted him. His hand trembled as he lit another cigarette. He remembered his mother's warning again, sharper now, "If you forget the land will forget you." He exhaled smoke, but the words clung like a curse. For the first time, doubt crept into his hardened chest. In Abuja, Musa's mansion glowed with electric light. He stood before a polished map of Nigeria, his finger tracing the river like a vein waiting to be tapped. Reports lay scattered on his desk: oil confirmed, local resistance minimal, operation underway. He poured himself another glass of whiskey and smiled. "Let them burn their huts," he murmured. "Ash makes good fertilizer." Back in the village, as the sun climbed higher, Bola hammered together a rough shelter for the homeless. Sweat ran down his brow, but he did not stop. He worked silently, grief pressing into every swing of his hammer. Beside him, Adana gathered the children and began teaching again, using scraps of chalk on broken boards. Her voice was weak, but steady. She taught not only numbers that morning, but something deeper, the stubborn act of surviving. As night fell once more, the village gathered in what was left of the square. The air was heavy, yet in their silence was defiance. Candles flickered in the darkness, one by one, until the ruins glowed with fragile light. Mama Ifioma lifted her cracked staff, voice rising. "This land remembers. This land will rise again." Her cry carried into the night, echoed by the murmurs of the people. Adana looked at Ngozi, at Bola, at the children. She did not know what tomorrow would bring: more guns, more fire, or perhaps a spark of change. But as the candles burned, she felt something stir in the ashes. Not hope, exactly. Not yet. Something older. Something waiting. Far away, thunder rolled across the horizon. The war for the land had only begun. The story you've just heard is more than fiction. It is a mirror, reflecting the struggles of countless communities across Africa and beyond. It speaks of how greed can burn homes, how silence can destroy futures, and how the fight for the land is, in truth, the fight for life itself. From Adana we learn that even when everything burns, teaching and nurturing the young is an act of defiance. From Ngozi we learn that truth is dangerous, but silence is deadlier. From Emeka we see how the world twists the lost into weapons, and from Chinedu we see how ambition without conscience can turn brother against sister. But perhaps the greatest lesson lies not in the characters, but in the land itself. The earth remembers. It carries scars, but it also carries seeds. And in those seeds lies the question we must all answer: will we water them with greed, or with hope? The story is not over. The land is waiting. And so are we.